Well, let's get some analysis now. I'm joined by Joshua Landins, the director of the Center for Middle East Studies at the University of Oklahoma. Joshua, good to have you with us. There's been such deep concern about the situation regarding civilians trapped inside Aleppo, major humanitarian suffering. Do you think that these safe passage corridors are going to ease the situation?
No, I don't. Not for the time being. They've already been opened, and almost nobody has gone through them. It's quite clear that the Syrians trapped inside East Aleppo do not trust the Syrian regime. This opens, of course, the door for UN participation and other foreign offices that could help to guarantee some kind of exit route.
It does seem as though a new military offensive is imminent in Aleppo. Where does that leave people trapped in Aleppo and indeed Daesh who are in the suburbs?
Well, it's I'm sure there are very mixed emotions, because the people who are in the Syrian government side of Aleppo, of course, are thrilled by this news. They're hoping that the eastern part of Aleppo, where the rebels have had their stronghold and have been shooting at the government side of Aleppo, is defeated. For the people who are inside this part of Aleppo, it's devastating. They are going to have to flee, and it's unclear whether they'll be able to come home, whether they'll have to flee to Turkey, or what they'll do. And so there's great uncertainty, and there's bound to be tons of suffering in the future for the people trapped inside.
You know, it's interesting that the UN doesn't seem to be fully apprised of this Russian initiative, and Russian military experts are now heading to Geneva to discuss it. How do you think this is going to impact on the next round of talks to try and resolve the situation in Syria?
Well, it's quite clear, I think, that the U.S. and de Mistura are very eager to get talks going, because part of the strategy behind Kerry's agreement to talk with the Russians and to try to come up with a common policy against ISIS with the Russians is that there's going to be a trade. The United States will work with Russia against ISIS, but they want Russia not to hold back the Syrian army in places like Aleppo. They do not want the Syrian army attacking moderate non-jihadist militias, especially the militias that the United States has worked with in the past. Now, that's an effort in order to slow down, attacks like the one that's now being carried out on East Aleppo. Whether it will have any effect, hard to say.
And this wider question about which militia groups the US is willing to work with. We've just been hearing that al-Nusra has formally announced its split from al-Qaeda. I mean, what does that mean for Russia and the US in terms of which rebel groups they will coordinate with?
Well, how the United States is going to respond to this split is anybody's guess at this point. The United States has been ramping up for a front against Nusra with the Russians. So clearly this is a response by Nusra to the U.S.-Russian agreement to work together to hit Nusra. They're frightened, and they're trying to save themselves. And that's, I think, the way it's going to be read, mostly. Now, will the United States hold off and not attack Nusra? Will it delist them from their terrorist list? I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. But it does throw in another wrinkle in this constantly shifting kaleidoscope. And this is bad news for the rebels, by and large. It's quite clear that the Syrian regime is hoping that many of these rebels, once they leave Aleppo, should they leave, that they will go to Turkey, that they'll leave the country, they'll abandon the battlefield. But many of them are likely to stick with the war. They're going to be pushed back into Idlib, which is dominated by Nusra, and they're going to continue to fight for many of them because they don't want to go into exile.